get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And I'm going to introduce Melih in a second, formally from Smartfinds Marketing. But before I do, Melih, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out on the podcast. And there's been some interesting ones throughout the years. I suggest checking out the one with Tony Horton, who was one of the founders of P90X. If you've ever watched P90X, he's got some amazing story about, it's not just the success, Melih, as you know, you work with a lot of CEOs, founders. It's sometimes the tough times that lead to the success, but we often see on the other end. He actually made money as a street mime when he was in California, and that's how he made his food and rent money before selling, I think, they've sold hundreds of millions of dollars of P90X DVDs and other programs, but it wasn't always like that. So check out that, and many, many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I always tell people, Melih, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships and profile them and their expertise in their company. And I found no better way to do that than to have them on my podcast over the past over decade. So if you've thought about starting a podcast, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com, email us. Happy to answer any questions. My business partner and I have been doing this, both of us, for over a decade. So let us know. And I'm excited to introduce Melih Oztalay, and he's the founder of Smartfinds Marketing. And talking about decades of experience, Melih, he started his marketing firm in 1987. He helps companies on a variety of things, but most recently, they're really focusing in on improving their conversion rate optimization for websites and companies. They use digital marketing, websites, social media, mobile, local listings. They've done it all. And specifically, they can help you improve your conversion on your website. And they work from a variety of types of clients, from manufacturers to automotive suppliers to franchisors to telecom. And he has been an expert, strategic, really relationship to lots of CEOs, CMOs who want to unlock their marketing success. Melih, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jeremy, it's great to be on your show. Don't you love the history?
But yeah, a big shout out to Jerry Nylans of Trade Press Services, who actually introduced us. And she's, check out Trade Press Services. She's also just a remarkable human being I've gotten to know over the years as well.
It is great.
And she introduced another great guest, Erica Miller, who was a Holocaust survivor and tells her story. And she opened a chain of successful clinics after she came to the U.S. So Melih, tell me a little bit more about what was the landscape like when you started in 1987, and how have things, progressed to where they are right now?
Yeah, Jeremy, I think just like you're doing now for the last 10 days, for the last 10 years, you find a way to take this knowledge and experience, and you figure out how to share it. How do you give back, so to speak? And there's no question that the last 35 years have been very interesting. Originally, strictly a traditional marketing firm. And then I started the internet group in '94, and that was that was very interesting. We had the wild west of the 1990s. It was great. The internet was free, so to speak. When I say free, I mean free to do anything, right? You got 14.4 modems. You got we had Yahoo, Netscape. I remember a buddy of mine who's helped me start up the ISPs division. He used to work at Sun Microsystems. We went down to the Sun Microsystems office back in those days. He's showing me Netscape, how thrilled he is with the internet. And so it's like, that was the starting point for the whole thing. Yahoo, Netscape, 14.4 modems. That's where it all started, and then you kind of move on from there, so to speak.
Why digital marketing,
yeah.
or why marketing in general? I know both your parents. You could have been a physician. Followed in their footsteps.
I could have.
Yeah,
I agree.
So why marketing?
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that our family is in business to begin with. Our history is in business, and I think the other side of the equation is I've always taken a liking to technology. I can go back to the late 1970s when I was in high school, and we had 8.5-inch discs, to run our backups on our mainframe. So there was always this affinity to technology. I'm an early adopter, which doesn't, that also plays into this. Probably why I ended up starting the internet group in '94 when I saw the value and the direction that the internet can bring and how big it can become. It didn't take me long to just adapt and move on. We live in a world of change. This is what I like. I like change.
We were talking before you hit record here about, I was asking a couple different industries that we can talk about specifically because you've worked in so many different ones. And I figured we would start with insurance company and some of the things you did with them, just to, give people some color on what you do.
Yeah. Over all these years, as you can imagine, you gain knowledge and experience through a lot of different industries. And I can tell you that as a marketing agency, I don't like the idea that we're niche in one industry. That doesn't make any sense to me because I cannot take on a client in the same industry with, if I already have a client in that industry. That's just a conflict of interest. It doesn't work for me. And it's interesting how so many industries want to work with a marketing agency that only knows their industry. I don't know. I find that interesting, but from my standpoint, I like the broad scope. I like working with businesses in different industries, and that certainly plays into what we're going to talk about now. So in Michigan, we had a business I'm not going to mention their name only because they're no longer in business for a lot of other reasons, and they launched a new brand back at the time that was focused on high deductibles. And the project had a $14 million budget. We were the lead agency to come in and talk about, how are we going to get this off the ground? We had a creative agency that was working with us in terms of its brand. We had us executing a variety of elements. We actually brought in McCann Erickson for this. And they helped with a lot of the traditional elements because Texas is so large. How do you reach the audience that you're looking for? And so basically what we're running were at that time, this is back going to 2007, 2008 timeframe. You're dealing with banners, essentially, running specifically into the Texas market and hyper targeting areas. And essentially, just to kind of give you some rough numbers going back to those times, we drove 20,000 visitors focused on your 25 to 35-year-olds who really don't think they need insurance. And in 4 weeks, we had a 20% application response rate. And that was predominantly on banner advertising, although we did content marketing back in those days as well. The real impetus came from the banner ad impressions that we were running. And I think for 2007, that was a normal time frame as far as what you're doing and the type of strategies that you would employ. And so the insurance industry, this was an interesting one. The twist wasn't that, hey, let's target anybody who wants insurance. The twist in this case was that it had to deal with the 25 to 35-year-olds. And together with the creative agency, we actually came up with a theme that was focused around your music, essentially. The entire theme of the campaign and the brand and its branding was around music. And so we used that to target the younger crowd and get the response that we were looking for.
Why did they want to target a crowd that just is hard to hard to reach, or I mean, like,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
25, you're invincible. I'm fine,
right, exactly.
but I guess if you can
I
do that and really get the response from the hardest to reach people, that's saying
I
something,
agree.
right?
No doubt. Look, why they wanted to target that age bracket. To be perfectly honest with you, they use their own statistics and analytics for the insurance industry to come up with the what it is that they want to do. And so when they are looking for high deductibles with a low insurance premium, this age range made sense. And you can kind of get the idea. This is the age range where they don't need they're not going to be using their insurance much. Give them a low premium and a high deductible because they're not going to be using it, and rather use that money, with the way that the insurance companies run their investments. And so I kind of get it.
I guess,
it was
the other
interesting,
thing,
but we made it happen.
yeah, the other thing I want to point out is, this is timeless fundamentals, right? So when we were talking about that driving, a banner to a application or something like that, we're talking about human psychology and humans taking an action on something. So
exactly,
what was the kind of the thought process of the music? If you want to just think back and walk me through, okay, here's how the music linked in, and how did you get, psychology wise, the people who maybe think they're invincible, who aren't going to sign up for health insurance, to click through and take an action that you want?
Yeah. So let me clarify one thing. When I said music theme, I wasn't referring to actually having music, although we had some background music on a variety of things that we did. We even had green screened 2 actors and, had music with that as well. But the branding theme was focused on, let's say, records, right? And record playing and CDs and those types of things. And each category of insurance had different levels, right? And so for each level, we did a different type of music theme that fell into that silo, so to speak, and different coloring schemes and different graphical visuals. But I think it all came down to something you just mentioned. When you're talking about marketing, you are talking about people's psychology. You're talking about color psychology, right? You're talking about visual psychology in terms of what's going to grab their attention, especially when you're dealing with the internet. And irrespective of the technology, sometimes you do have limitations as to what you can or cannot do. Albeit, I think 5G is going to change all that, and we'll be free to do more. When human psychology is important, so how do you grab their attention? And then when you're dealing with advertising, you're talking about running tests, right? Small snippets of tests to see what's working, what's not working. Some cases you're going to switch it all around. In some cases, you're just going to make one little tweak, change the layout, right? You're going to change the colors. You're going to put different graphical elements in one spot and versus another spot. And, we're in the United States, so we read left to right. We need to understand that whatever's on the left side and at the top tends to get more attention. These are all things that play into marketing. And a lot of it, you can go to school for it all day long. At the end of the day, until you start living it and seeing how it actually plays out in the real world, this really comes down to experience and gaining that experience to figure out, how are you going to make this work? Going back to what I said earlier, I think what was important here is that while in one case we worked with insurance companies, we worked with manufacturing companies, we worked with financial institutes, we worked with franchisees and franchisors, the automotive industry, especially car dealerships. There's been a number of industries, and the interesting thing is being able to take something you gain from one industry, the knowledge and experience you get from one industry, and being able to take that and apply it to another industry, and it does work. So when you're doing, when you're taking that knowledge and experience and applying it someplace else, to be perfectly honest with you, you're making things a little bit more efficient and effective when you're able to use that concept again. And that's where I think this makes this keeps things fun, especially when something new comes around, and I got to figure out how to use it. How do you apply it? Does it work? Does it not work? Keep going.
And speaking of that, going from insurance companies, there's also a company you worked with that was couples who have problems conceiving. So talk
Correct.
about what are the things you did in that industry.
So that particular project, I think the interesting thing about this was it's a new brand. Nobody knows them. It's never been on the market. And while the client had a lot of operational issues fulfilling orders in the beginning, is a lot of startup problems, so to speak. Our job in a very short period of time. Normally, I would have loved to add a quote unquote 6-month planning period on this project, but we had no planning period. We had roughly 30 days or less trying to make it all happen. And there were some issues with the client in terms of wanting to get to market quickly. So without a lot of planning that we would love to have had, basically we came up with an omni-channel marketing strategy, driving people primarily social, no question about that, but from different sources, applying content marketing to the mix as well, and running some ads. What was interesting about this, and I'll mention statistical first, and then we'll move on to the psychology side of this equation. We drove a little over 800,000 visitors to the website in 4 months, and that was amazing. The amazing part about this was the fact that when you go back and you analyze that first period, what we learned was that in social media marketing, there's a compounding effect, assuming that you maintain your level of activity. So the number of people did not change on this project. The budget didn't change on this project. The amount of content, advertising, and shares that we did in social media did not change. But 1 month to the next, it was exponential about the amount of traffic that we were able to secure during that time frame. And I have to admit, the concept of what we did, which was based on a 5-point social media marketing strategy, using marketers, social media marketers, using brand advocates, and then using social media influencers. Those are 3 different levels of people. We were able to pull this off. What I didn't expect was the exponential result. I was doing the reason I came up with a strategy originally because Google Hummingbird back in 2013 caused me some grief, and I lost a large client because of Hummingbird. The client didn't blame us, but they decided not to play Google's game. And it's a long story, but once that happened, I had to come up with a different strategy that did not include Google, both from an organic standpoint as well as from a pay-per-click standpoint. My strategy focused on social media marketing because, go back to the days of your 300 baud modems that we were connecting to bulletin boards. That was social media marketing back in those days. And so social media marketing is definitely the core strategy for most businesses in a lot of I should say in almost all cases. But we came up with a strategy, and while we tested it and came up with some ideas of what the results would look like, what shocked me was the fact that we had an exponential result, exponential compounding effect. That was mind-boggling and amazing.
I want to talk about influencers, right? And you mentioned advocates and influencers, and that is a huge effect. And also, they already have their own audiences that they deploy
Correct.
to. That talk about how do you approach? What's the best way to approach some of these influencers? And I don't know if there's specific deals for each person, or when you actually launch it, everyone kind of has the same scenario as far as we're going to pay you or not pay you. Just approaching influencers in general, because I think it's a little bit of a black box for some people. Yes, this sounds like it would work. I'm not sure how to even go out and approach someone, and what are some of the offers, and talk about that.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, what industry are you in and who's your target audience? If you're in B2B, you're not going to want, a B2C influencer, and they may have 1 million followers. That's great, but so what, right? But if you're a B2B, you might be talking more towards an influencer who runs his own podcast, like you're talking about, and has a following of, let's say, only 100,000 people. But those are the 100,000 people that are quality and are your target audience. So, so that's the first question that we have to ask. Then the next scenario is that there's a few different approaches on how do you get to influencers. The first one is the fact that there are agencies nowadays that you can go to. So I'm going to fast forward this to today's world and tell you that you can talk to agencies who understand the different types of influencers out there in different markets and make the recommendations of, let's say, 5 different influencers that you can interview and talk to, and so on and so forth. The other one are websites where you can just do your own work. It's basically you figure it out as far as what influencers make sense to your business, the demographics that you're trying to target, your geographies that you're trying to target, et cetera, and figure that out. And of course, the third option is that you may have heard of people and you just approach them directly. I don't know that there's a reason to not go direct to an influencer. I will mention a fourth option, kind of a, beating around the bush, so to speak. And that is that you might want to, very early on in this process, start following an influencer that you really want to have, represent you, and just develop the relationship with them directly. Now, what I mean by that is follow what they're doing, comment on what they're saying, what they're saying, engage with them, share their content. They need to see that you're involved with them. Once they get to see that repetition's there, whether it's daily or even a few times a day or weekly, that's when you're going to start to be able to reach out to them and get their ask for something. At that point, it could be free because they're seeing that you're helping them, right? And they're going to say, okay, I'll help you too. And so you kind of barter your exchange your services, so to speak, or your efforts, labor efforts. But that tends to take longer and is more sweat equity. I think the first 3 options are better. In other words, go with the agencies, find somebody or find your DIY type websites where you can identify the influencers that you want to move on from there.
Yeah. Melih, we were talking about conversion rate optimization, CRO, and, so I wanted to pull up a few, and we have not looked at this ahead of time. We talked a little. I'd love to have you break down what you're seeing as far as the website goes, and, how does this relate to conversions on a website, whatever you want them to do. So I know we were talking, you've worked with some telecom companies, so I figured I'd pull up a few and you could just talk me through a little bit about what you're seeing, what you're seeing is good. And maybe, again, it's all a test. So we don't know without the data, but what would you test on these pages? So I pull up, if you are listening to this only, there is a YouTube video on this, but we're looking at Ring Central website. So I'll just have you walk me through and I'll navigate around where you tell me and what you're seeing. Okay.
Real quickly, one thing I'd like you to do is reload the page because I'm curious if we get any pop-ups. That this is going or popovers, pop-ups, whatever you want to call them. Because these are areas that you can embed your call to actions. And so let me just be clear about one thing, and let's define something. Conversion rate optimization, or what we call CRO, in the world of marketing, not chief revenue officer, but rather conversion rate optimization is about taking your existing traffic coming to your website. I'm not talking about spending more money on driving more traffic. Take the existing traffic and figure out how do you increase the number of leads or sales that you're getting from it. The best way to approach this is to figure out what are your calls to actions. What's going to get that person to take it to the next level? That you have to get them to a decision-making stage during their visit or multiple visits, and get them to reach out to you. So one thing I will tell you is that in our CRO program, we have an artificial intelligence tool that is tracking the person's journey. And we get reports on that that we're able to identify whether things are working or not working. And we're taking people through various stages. And the AI tool helps based on that visitor's journey, which may not be the one time, but could be multiple times that they're coming to your website, determine what is it that it's going to put in front of them as the call to action. And of course, you set up multiple types of calls to actions that are possible during this process ahead of time. And that in turn is going to figure out whether or not you're going to get them to become a lead or a sale. The other element of this is running A/B testing. And I don't think that you can get away from that. Certain pages are going to react better in one situation versus another situation. You need to know what pages are working and what they're not working. And so I'm going to preface what we're going to say now about this website around these few topics that I just mentioned. And so, number one, when you talk about website design in today's world, white space is important. RingCentral has done a great job using white space without, a lot of unnecessary and distracting content. Very simple. They're trying to reach out using people's faces, which I think is important. We did this with a car dealership once before, where car dealerships tend to take photos, for example, of just the car without a human being. And I think that's wrong. I think they need to have the human being involved in that car or with that car in order to sell it, especially online. But here we have humans interacting with us. I think that's important. But what I'm noticing is we don't have a lot of activity in terms of, we have a chat bot. That's okay. And some people like to engage with chat bots, some people don't. We do have a view demo that sticks out on the right. I'm questioning whether or not that needs to be on the left, in the middle. This is where I would run an A/B test. The view demo on the top left is, catches my attention, but the view demo on the lower left does not. I would suggest running an A/B test and see which one of these, based on location and background, makes sense. Does C pricing make sense over there, or do you want to do the demo first and then go to pricing? And this is where Google Analytics comes into play. You figure out what the flow is of the people that are coming to your website, and whether or not the location, color schemes, etc., make a difference based on where people are at. So off the top of my head, that would be the first thing that catches my attention. How do we take that view demo and see pricing, because those are your primary calls to action, and figure out whether or not they're sitting in the right locations?
Got it. Yeah. And as we scroll down, I don't know if there's any other, looks like they have some elements here. Are there anything else you would think of testing? You mentioned like movement. I don't know if you are referring to like some kind of video here, as opposed to they have a static image. I don't know if there's anything else you would test.
I agree. Yeah, I think, people do like video, and we've seen a growing number of people moving towards video, right? So Instagram's section where they have, the videos, or YouTube. These are good examples of where YouTube video is a primary player in trying to get people's attention. Looking at the rest of the website, I think everything about their homepage is about that top section. And I would just play around with some new ideas in terms of that demo, that pricing, and whether or not there should be a video there or not.
Yeah. And we'll go to the next one, but I'll just quickly click on the, just to see what does it show when we have the pricing and the demo. So we can see the pricing page is kind of like a standard pricing page comparing plans, and the here's the demo page here. I don't know if there's any comments on that.
Yeah, the only comment I have is not this demo page, but the pricing page is too complicated. I'm a consumer. I don't know the difference between RingCentral MVP up at the top versus RingCentral Video, right? And down below, I have a whole flurry of lists of services, and some of it makes sense, right? you might be able to figure it out. And some of it might be like, well, do I really need it? It's like the list it's like they put too much information at this point in front of people.
Yeah. I have to really sift through, and now I'm spending time trying to figure out of these four plans, which one's the best.
Right.
And they're not, we're talking like $7 of difference,
I know.
right? So just give me something to start with, maybe you're saying, and don't give me everything.
Correct. So they did two things over here is, and I understand what they try to accomplish. They put most popular on the left and put that in that orange color to get people's attention. And they put best value over there on the right, but the best value doesn't stick out because that's not really a strong, that navy, that light blue just doesn't grab people's attention right away. And then of course, like I said, we have these tabs up at the top, and I'm not sure whether or not I should check into them too. Or not,
honestly,
right? So, anyway.
Until you pointed that out, Melih, I didn't even realize that was there. So I didn't even see those tabs. I was just scrolling down. So my eye didn't even catch these things. Yeah. Until you pointed that out. So
I agree.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So,
that would be, I'm not saying it's wrong, right? But I would definitely suggest doing an A/B test on this and just bring down the distraction and focus on, something that's going to take people right into, without a lot of thought process, to become a client. Then you can upsell them if you wish later, but you're trying to upsell them up front when they don't know what it is that they want to buy. And I just bring it back.
Yeah, no, I love that. So the next one I pulled up here is grasshopper.com, which I guess does something similar. So walk me through what you're saying.
And so they have a chat bot as well. What I'm seeing over here, and look, we did a lot of work on color psychology. We've done it a few times on a few projects. And I'm a little concerned about the color scheme over here. There's something not quite right. It's like the colors are distracting to me. And number two is we have a distracting top above the fold page. I've got the colors, and then I've got those lines all coming in from the left and the right. All these things are distracting me before I can even read. Keep personal and business calls separate. I suggest keeping it simple. Apply KISS, right? That would be the first thing that comes to my mind. And there are no real calls to actions here because of the distractions. The distractions are taking people away from the core element that you want, which is to get them to sign up. Up to $75 off of what, right? So, because it doesn't jump out to me that I can click somewhere in there. Get started for free. Well, yeah, and it says, it takes me a little while, but then I realize there's $26 a month there. I just think this is a clear A to B test method. Come up with a completely B version that's so far away from this that reduces the distractions, and see if that does any better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could see in the Ring Central, you really kind of have two color schemes. You have orange and blue and white. Here, if you're looking at what we're looking at, you see a try free at the top, which is blue button. Then you have a purple button that is get started free. Yeah. And then there's different colors like purple and blue coming in. And
the black at the top sticks out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole nother color.
You're saying, babe, is basically test just maybe the try free at the top is just purple, so it's consistent with the try free in the middle or whatever. Just the color scheme. There's a couple different colors going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you picked these two because Ring Central is easy on the eyes. I can focus on the content without the distractions, right? Yeah. The only A/B test that I think that they may want to try is just this view demo and pricing. The other thing that we found in their case is that their pricing page is a little busy. I think they could narrow that down and focus on something just to get people started. But Grasshopper is wildly distracting.
Yeah. And I'll just click through.
Back off. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always obviously maybe this is working from them and it's doing amazing, and maybe not, but it's just a test. Yeah. And then so here's if you click on the get started free button, here's what we see as far as this goes. Obviously, this is it seems like much
easier. Yes. Yep. Scroll down a little ways though. Let's see what we got here. Choose a toll-free number. Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is what we're talking about for the homepage, right? Keep it easy on the eyes. Keep the distractions to a minimum. And you just said something I think is important to mention. And we've come across this. I mean, at least I've come across this many times, especially with other CEOs. They'll tell me, "Oh, we're doing great," right? So they're saying that, okay, look, we're getting 20% or whatever the response rate is on the website, and then they're saying, well, we don't think we need to change this. I said, well, what if that 20% was 30%? What would you do then? Right? So how well they're performing is really dependent upon whether or not they're running through the various testing methods to figure out whether or not their base that they have right now that they're comfortable with, that they seem to think is a success, is really a success. Maybe you can bump it up 5%. But that requires somebody to sit down and do the analysis and interpret the information, come up with a new idea, and then run that A/B testing as well as other calls to actions that you can find out whether or not you can bump it up by 5 or 10 more percent.
Yeah, it's worth a test. And like you could see, the Ring Central buttons are blue, and then the Grasshopper buttons are kind of all over the place as far as what they're. It's blue on the homepage and it's purple in the middle. And then when you click through to the get free, it's green. And so the green definitely sticks out. So that just makes me think, well, maybe they didn't choose green because it blends in too much with the rest of their site. I don't know. But it's interesting that they have three.
No,
yeah, go ahead.
You know what the homepage reminds me of is if you go to Adobe's color wheel, the color schemes that they provide you and they give you some ideas. This is what this reminds me of. Somebody picked, a starting color, and then from there they used a color scheme wheel of some sort that gave them, okay, these are the other colors that you can try and use with this color, and they basically applied them all.
Yeah,
I'd back off on that. I really would.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say, Melih, this has been fantastic. I love kind of hearing and following your marketing brain at work. As far as that goes. And I just want to point people towards where they can find out more, learn more. They can go to smartfindsmarketing.com to learn more. Are there any other places online that we should point people towards?
I would suggest reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I am a big LinkedIn fan. I've been on LinkedIn since 2005. I have 16,000 really close friends on LinkedIn. But by all means, I would say reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. Awesome. Obviously our website is full of information, full of knowledge, a lot of experience in terms of its content and its different sections. We are coming out with a new website, hopefully within this first quarter. It also will show a new brand and new colors for us. We've basically decided to kind of freshen things up, so to speak.
Awesome. Everyone check out smartfindsmarketing.com. Check out Melih on LinkedIn. Check out more episodes on Inspired Insider and Rise 25. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeremy. It was great being on your show.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.